I called a family meeting to share that I'm seriously ill and might not have much time left. My brother and his wife decided to announce their pregnancy during it, and now they're upset. I never imagined that sharing the most heartbreaking news of my life would turn into a celebration, but not for me. When I called my family together, I was not looking for sympathy. I just wanted to be honest with them. My health had taken a turn for the worse, and I did not know how much time I had left. I thought they deserved to know. But before I could even finish speaking, my brother and his wife cut me off with their own announcement. They were having a baby. Suddenly, my pain, my fears, my reality did not matter. The room erupted with cheers, hugs, and tears of joy for them. I sat there, invisible at my own family meeting. And now, they are angry with me for not celebrating with them. But can you really blame me? For most of my life, I have never been the kind of person who seeks attention. I have always been the one to support others, to listen, and to put my own struggles on the back burner for the sake of my family. That is just how I was raised. My parents always emphasized the importance of family unity, and I believed in it wholeheartedly. I thought that if I was always there for my family, they would be there for me when I needed them the most. I have one younger brother, Alex. Growing up, he was the golden child, always showered with praise, always given the best opportunities. It was not that I was neglected, but it was clear that Alex could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. If he made a mistake, they brushed it off as a minor misstep. If I made a mistake, I was expected to take responsibility and fix it immediately. He was the one who got extra support in school, the one they spent more money on, the one they proudly introduced to friends and family. My parents would talk endlessly about Alex's achievements, how talented he was, how he was destined for greatness. Meanwhile, I quietly did my best, never asking for recognition. I did not mind much, or at least I told myself I did not. I was content being the responsible older sibling, the one who quietly handled problems without making a fuss. Even as adults, our dynamic remained the same. When Alex and his wife, Sarah, got married, my parents practically worshipped them. They talked endlessly about how perfect their life was, how they were going to have the most beautiful family, how Alex had achieved everything they had ever hoped for. Meanwhile, I lived a more reserved life. I had a small but fulfilling career, a few close friends, and I never had a burning desire for the spotlight. But I always believed that if something truly important ever happened in my life, something that changed everything, my family would be there for me. That belief was shattered when I received the worst news of my life. A few months ago, I started feeling unusually fatigued. At first, I ignored it, blaming stress or lack of sleep. But as time went on, other symptoms appeared: dizziness, loss of appetite, unexplained weight loss. It became clear that something was wrong. I hesitated to go to the doctor. Maybe it was fear or maybe it was denial. But eventually, my body left me no choice. I could barely make it through the day without feeling exhausted. Simple tasks like walking up the stairs made my heart race. Something was deeply wrong. After multiple doctor visits and countless tests, I received my diagnosis. It was serious. The doctor's words blurred together as he explained the prognosis. There was a treatment plan, but no guarantees. I sat there, trying to process it, feeling like the ground had been ripped out from under me. My future was suddenly uncertain, and for the first time, I felt truly afraid. I debated whether to tell my family. A part of me did not want to burden them, but I knew I could not keep something like this a secret forever. I wanted them to hear it from me, not from rumors or distant relatives. So, I decided to gather everyone for a family meeting. I was terrified. I did not know how they would react. Would they comfort me? Would they cry? Would they promise to support me? I told myself that no matter how often they overlooked me, this was different. This was life or death. I had no idea that my news, the most devastating news of my life, would be completely overshadowed. I spent days planning the family meeting, making sure everyone would be available. I sent out a message in our family group chat, telling them that I had something very important to discuss. My parents responded quickly, saying they would be there. Alex and Sarah took longer to reply, but eventually, they confirmed. I thought nothing of it at the time. The night before, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying worst-case scenarios. Would they break down? Would they tell me everything would be fine, even if it was not? I did not know what kind of reaction to expect, but I held on to the hope that at least, for once, they would truly listen. The day of the meeting, I arrived early at my parents' house. The moment I walked in, I felt a strange tension in the air, but I brushed it off as my own nerves. I sat in the living room, hands clasped together, waiting as everyone trickled in. My mother set out coffee and snacks, as if this was just another casual gathering. Once everyone was seated, I took a deep breath. I have something really important to tell you all, I began, my voice already unsteady. I have been sick for a while now. I went to the doctor, and it is serious. I could see their expressions change. My mother's smile faded. My father frowned. Alex and Sarah exchanged a glance but said nothing. I swallowed hard and continued. I have been diagnosed with a condition that... Before I could even finish my sentence, Sarah let out a loud gasp and clutched Alex's arm. "Oh my God, we cannot hold it in anymore," she blurted out. I blinked, thrown off. "What?" Alex grinned, standing up and pulling Sarah to her feet. "We were planning to announce this later, but we are having a baby." For a moment, there was silence. Then, my parents erupted into cheers. My mother leaped from her seat, pulling Sarah into a tight hug. My father clapped Alex on the back, his face lighting up with pride. Meanwhile, I sat there, frozen. I had just told them I was seriously ill. I had barely even finished my sentence. And now, the conversation was no longer about me. It was about them. Sarah beamed. We wanted to wait for the perfect moment, but this felt right. This felt right? I felt my stomach twist. I looked at Alex, waiting for him to at least acknowledge what I had said. Instead, he was laughing, talking about baby names and nursery colors. I tried to speak again. Alex, I was trying to. Come on, he cut me off with a chuckle. Isn't this amazing news? You are going to be an uncle. An uncle. That was all I was now. Not someone who had just shared devastating news. Just an uncle to their future child. I clenched my fists under the table. My parents had completely shifted their focus, gushing over how excited they were to be grandparents. My mother wiped away happy tears. My father kept saying how proud he was of Alex. No one, not one of them, acknowledged what I had just told them. I felt like I was suffocating. My throat burned, my hands shook, and my heart pounded painfully in my chest. I wanted to scream, to make them listen, to force them to understand how much this moment meant to me. Instead, I stood up. I am leaving, I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. Sarah turned to me with a puzzled expression. What? We are celebrating. I let out a bitter laugh. Celebrating what? The fact that you completely ignored what I just told you? That I came here to share something incredibly difficult and was immediately overshadowed. Alex frowned. Come on, do not be like that. It is not a competition. I stared at him in disbelief. A competition? Are you serious? My mother waved her hand dismissively. Sweetheart, of course we care about you. But this is happy news. We should be focusing on the joy right now. I had no words. I had spent days agonizing over this conversation, preparing myself for the emotional weight of telling them. I had been terrified of their reaction, only to realize that their reaction was no reaction at all. I turned and walked out the door without another word. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with messages from my parents and Alex, all asking why I was acting so dramatic. Not one of them asked if I was okay. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had ever truly mattered to them at all. The room was silent for a few seconds after my brother's announcement, and I could almost hear my heartbeat in my ears. I was still trying to process the fact that the meeting I had carefully planned, the one where I had to deliver the hardest news of my life, had just been hijacked for their joyful celebration. My mother was the first to react. She let out an excited gasp and immediately rushed toward my brother and his wife, pulling them into a tight hug. My father followed suit, shaking my brother's hand and patting him on the back, his face lighting up with joy. My other relatives chimed in with congratulations, their focus entirely shifting from me to the expecting couple. It felt like I had become invisible. I sat there, my hands clenched into fists on my lap, as I watched my brother bask in the attention. His wife had a huge smile on her face, her hand protectively resting on her stomach as she soaked in all the excitement. No one even glanced my way. No one remembered why we were gathered in the first place. I cleared my throat, trying to get their attention, but no one even looked at me. My heart pounded, frustration and sadness swirling together inside me. It took everything in me to not break down right there. Finally, I spoke. My voice was calm, but there was a sharpness in my tone. I am happy for you both, I said, forcing a small smile, though my chest felt like it was caving in. But I was not finished. A few people finally turned to look at me, though the excitement in the room did not die down. My mother, still beaming, turned back to my brother. Darling, do you have any name ideas yet? She asked, completely ignoring me. That was the final straw. I stood up abruptly, my chair scraping against the floor loudly enough to make everyone pause. I said I was not finished. I repeated louder this time. My voice shook slightly, but I stood my ground. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned toward me. My mother frowned as if I had just ruined a perfect moment. My brother, however, looked annoyed as if I was inconveniencing him. What is it? He asked, his tone laced with irritation. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. I called this family meeting because I have something important to share, I said. My voice was firm now, unyielding. I have been diagnosed with a serious illness. I do not have much time left. The reaction was instant. The room shifted from celebration to disbelief. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. My father's smile vanished, his face darkening with concern. A few relatives exchanged uneasy glances, the weight of my words finally sinking in. My brother, however, looked almost irritated. What? He asked, blinking rapidly. Is this some kind of joke? I shook my head, my throat tightening. I wish it was. The reality of it finally seemed to dawn on everyone. My mother's eyes filled with tears, and she slowly sank into a chair. My father stared at me in shock, his hands trembling slightly. My aunt murmured something under her breath, and the room became so still that I could hear my own breathing. But then my brother spoke again. So, you are telling me that you waited until now to say this? He scoffed, shaking his head. Could you not have waited? You could not let us have this moment. I felt like I had been slapped. Waited? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, he snapped. You knew we had big news to share, and yet you chose today, of all days, to drop this on everyone? Do you even realize how selfish that is? A sharp pain shot through my chest, not from my illness, but from the sheer cruelty of his words. I looked around the room, expecting someone, anyone, to defend me. But my mother just sat there, looking torn. My father rubbed his temples, avoiding eye contact. No one spoke up for me. I swallowed the lump in my throat, my vision blurring. I am the selfish one? I asked, my voice breaking. I have been dealing with this alone for months. I thought my family deserved to know. I wanted to tell you all together, so I did not have to go through this conversation over and over again. But instead of listening, instead of even acknowledging what I was going through, you hijacked this meeting for your announcement. My brother scoffed. Well, forgive us for being excited about life while you are here bringing in doom and gloom. A stunned silence filled the room. My mother reached for his arm, murmuring, that is not fair, dear, but he pulled away. I clenched my jaw. You know what? I said, stepping back. I am done. If this is how you react to me needing you for once, then maybe I should not have even bothered. I turned to leave, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. But before I could walk out the door, I heard my brother mutter under his breath. He always makes everything about himself. That was it. I turned back sharply. I make everything about myself? You took the one moment I needed and made it about you. And now you are angry that I dared to speak? That I dared to tell the truth? My brother just rolled his eyes, wrapping an arm around his wife protectively, as if I was attacking them. I had no more energy to argue. I took one last look at my parents, my aunts, uncles, and cousins. Their silence told me everything I needed to know. I walked out, feeling a deep, cutting loneliness settle into my bones. For the first time, I realized that I had never truly been part of this family. And maybe I never would be. I stepped out of that house feeling a weight settle over me. It was a strange, sinking realization. I had always known my family was flawed, but I had never imagined they would dismiss me at my most vulnerable moment. The cold air outside hit my skin, but it did not compare to the chill I felt inside. I had walked into that house expecting comfort, support, something. Instead, I had been cast aside like an afterthought. I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. A deep ache swelled in my chest, but I refused to let the tears fall. Not now. Not for them. I took slow, deep breaths, forcing myself to focus. This was my reality now. I was on my own. Or so I thought. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another dismissive message, maybe even a scolding from my mother for ruining the night. But instead, it was from my cousin, Sarah. Sarah, I just want you to know that I am so sorry. I had no idea they would react that way. You deserved better. I stared at the message for a moment before my phone vibrated again. Sarah, if you ever need anything, I am here. Please, do not shut everyone out because of them. For the first time that night, my throat tightened, not from anger, but from something else. Gratitude. I had felt like I had lost my entire family in that moment, but maybe, just maybe, I had not lost everyone. I responded with a simple, thank you. It was all I could manage. The next few days were a blur. I had expected some kind of follow-up from my parents or my brother, but none came. The silence from their ends spoke volumes. Then, a week later, my mother called. I stared at the screen, my stomach twisting into knots. A part of me wanted to ignore it, to let her sit with the weight of her inaction. But another part of me, the part that still held onto a small thread of hope, made me press accept. Hello. My voice was steady, but inside, I was bracing myself. There was a long pause on the other end before my mother finally spoke. Her voice was quiet, uncertain. Why have you not called? I let out a humorless laugh. You cannot be serious. She sighed. Look, I know things got tense. Tense. I repeated. Mom, I told my family that I am sick, that I might not have much time left. And you all ignored me. Then, when I tried to stand up for myself, you let my brother attack me for ruining his night. There was silence. Then a soft sniffle. I did not know what to say, she admitted. It was such a shock and... You did not know what to say, I cut in, my voice sharp. But you knew what to say to congratulate my brother. You knew how to celebrate his news. Another pause. Sweetheart, she whispered. I do not want to lose you. I closed my eyes. Then why did you act like I did not matter? I do not have an answer for that, she said, and for the first time, I could hear genuine regret in her tone. I think we got caught up in the excitement. But that is no excuse. You are my son, and I should have been there for you. For a brief moment, I let myself believe her. Let myself hope that maybe she truly understood. Then, she added, your brother is still upset. He feels like you tried to overshadow their big moment. My stomach turned. You are seriously bringing this up again? I just think you should reach out, she said carefully. Maybe apologize and... I hung up. I stared at my phone, my entire body numb. Apologize? For what? For trying to tell my family I was sick? For not letting them completely erase me from my own announcement? It was then that I knew I had spent my whole life waiting for my family to treat me like I mattered. But they never would. Not unless I forced them to. I spent the next few weeks reevaluating everything. I focused on my health, on getting the best treatment possible. But more than that, I started drawing boundaries. I stopped chasing their approval. I stopped waiting for them to treat me the way I deserved. My father eventually called, his tone gruff but slightly softer than usual. He asked about my condition, and while it was not the heartfelt conversation I had hoped for, it was something. My mother continued to reach out, but every conversation somehow circled back to my brother's feelings, his resentment, how I should be the one to fix things. Each time, I shut it down. And my brother? He never called. At first, that hurt. But over time, I realized that I was better off without his bitterness poisoning my life. Sarah, however, kept in touch. She checked on me regularly, making sure I had everything I needed. She listened when I needed to vent. She became the family I never knew I had. Months passed. My treatments were difficult, but I was fighting. I had made peace with my situation, even if my family still refused to fully acknowledge it. Then one day I got a call from Sarah. "You are not going to believe this," she said, her voice laced with amusement. "What?" I asked, already bracing myself. "Your brother and his wife had their baby shower last weekend. You know, the one the whole family was hyping up." I said nothing, waiting. "Well," she continued, "apparently, no one showed up." I blinked. "What?" "Yeah. Mom and Dad went, of course. A couple of aunts. But the rest of the family? They did not bother." I was stunned. My brother had always been the golden child, the center of every family event. But now, when it mattered to him, no one cared? Sarah chuckled. "Guess people finally saw through the act." I let out a slow breath. I should have felt vindicated, maybe even smug. But instead I just felt nothing. I had already moved on. That phone call confirmed what I had already known. My family was broken, and no amount of bending over backward would fix it. So I stopped trying. I focused on the people who truly cared. I spent my time with those who showed up for me. And most importantly, I refused to waste another second chasing love that was never truly mine to begin with. If you enjoyed this story, do not forget to like, subscribe, and press the bell icon so you never miss an update.